Hey guys, Buckeye Bar guys. We wanted to thank you guys for tuning in to us here on Buckeye Bar Talk. Great show we got coming up today. We're really looking forward to you guys listening and watching it. But just wanted to remind everybody, just remember to subscribe to the channel, hit the all notifications bell, that way anytime a new show comes up, you guys will be alerted to it. And don't forget to like the video and comment on the video. All interactions with us helps us continue to grow, and we appreciate your support. Now to the show. Welcome back, everybody, to Buckeye Bar Guys here on Buckeye Bar Talk. I'm Mike.
And I'm John.
Big show today. Today is
March 27th.
March 27th, Saturday, March 27th.
It's a beautiful day out there.
It is a beautiful day out there. It's going to be in the 70s or low 70s today.
It's going to be April next week.
Yeah. Times are, it's flying and flying and flying.
At least it's been nice recently. Of course, I think we're getting rain on Monday. It was actually supposed to snow on Monday, but I think that's passed.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
hopefully it's passed. You never know in Ohio.
I mean, it's typical this time of year. You'll get these days where this is like where, it's the same with fall. It's just late fall. You just rain, snow, 70s.
Yesterday felt like a late fall day.
Yeah.
It was cold and windy, but today's feeling good.
Yeah. So
looking beautiful out there.
It'll be a good day. So yeah, Saturday, March 27th. We have a huge show today, a lot to get through. So we're going to really get into this. We'll first start with basketball. Sadly, Ohio State didn't make it past the first round.
Their season ended much sooner than what we thought they would.
We filmed last week's show and then watched them lose a couple hours later. So a lot of the stuff that we mentioned last week's show kind of, again, when you play these mid-majors, you just don't know a lot about them. And, Oral Roberts had a kid that could shoot the ball and a kid that could get rebounds and, put up second, chance shots. And I can't remember his name, but he was pretty dominant under the boards.
Boehner.
Yeah. And they just, again, a lot of the issues that have plagued Ohio State, especially coming down the stretch in the regular season, just seemed like they really came and hit them in the butt. Oral Roberts was up for most of the game. Ohio State came back late, tied it, went into overtime, and they just couldn't win the game in overtime.
Yeah, they didn't have a good game plan. I mean, it felt like at times that as long as they try to kind of like assert themselves physically, they were doing better against Oral Roberts, but that would only last for so long. Anytime they got a lead or they got back into the game, they would have like 2 turnovers in a row. And, when you're going against the best shooter in the country, like the best scorer, I mean, like, I think I put it on Twitter. This is obviously like a very simplistic answer to it, but you can't lose the best shooter in the country. Like, you have to stay on that guy. So.
Somebody else has to beat you. And even if it's that Boehner guy, make him beat you. I mean, don't let them shoot like crazy when he's, the best shooter in the country. When touching on that physicality, that was the one thing that was really bothering me during the game, is that they seemed like, every time they would really play Big Ten basketball, they could really start establishing themselves. Yeah. And I'm just like, keep it up, force the referees to call fouls on you. And, and it didn't, it's been a week now. I didn't think the refs were like calling a lot of chippy fouls.
You can't blame anyone but Ohio State.
No,
on that.
That's not what I'm saying. It's like, play physical basketball, because it didn't seem like the refs were really calling a lot of chippy stuff. So no. I think they were letting some stuff get through. I thought there was nothing where you should be afraid to play physical basketball. So
I think there was some questionable stuff like towards the end of the game, if I remember correctly, but it wasn't anything that Ohio State like shouldn't have won that game anyways. Like, they were letting them play.
Yeah. So Oral Roberts, they actually keep on moving on. They're actually going to be playing later today in the Sweet 16 against Arkansas. So good luck to them. They beat us. I'm not going to.
But they beat Florida too, so at least they got a second win.
Yeah, so I'm not going to. I would like to see, now that they're moving forward, I would like to see, maybe, who knows, maybe they can get themselves into the Elite Eight and then see what happens from there. I mean, you never know. 15 seat making the Final Four would be pretty cool if they could somehow do it. But
that would be cool.
So we'll move more into, I think, kind of like discussion. I mean, we got a lot of spring football to talk about, but we kind of wanted to just touch on Holtmann for a minute and just when does he need to get into the second round? Because
Well, I think the second weekend. If I'm not wrong, I think he has made the second round before. Okay. So, I mean, I know one of the other podcasts, I think it was Scarlet and Gray. I'm not sure, but one of the other podcasts, they had posed like the question, like, when is he on the hot seat? And a lot of people on Buckeye Twitter, like, took that the complete wrong way, that they were calling for his head, that he should be fired. Like that. Absolutely. I mean, that's an honest question that needs to be asked at this point. Like, how grateful, how thankful are you for Ohio State, just being a top half Big Ten team, maybe top 4, so like top third of the Big Ten, and playing the first weekend of the tournament? Like, is that enough to sustain a career with Ohio State? I mean, we know the guy has had transfers in and out of his program. He's had good, like really good recruiting classes, but a lot of the pieces have transferred out. We know that he goes on long winning streaks, which are coupled with long losing streaks every season that he's been there. And he's never made it past the first weekend of the tournament. So I think, I mean, it is a reasonable question to ask. Like, when is he on the hot seat?
And it is a reasonable question. And just kind of thinking about that, what they were saying in the other podcast, and people getting upset with them on Twitter. Let's remind everybody that the coach before Holtmann, who everybody seemed like they were pretty tired of at the end, when he was pretty much forced out, and he made it to a lot of second weekends and further. So I mean.
And he may have went out a lot of times, and he lost sometimes in the first round. He lost sometimes in the second round, but he made it to 2 Final Fours. I mean, he did hit the lottery the one year with the kids that came in.
Still made it. So
still made it.
2 Final Fours. He made it
a couple Elite Eights.
And Sweet 16. He lost in, or 2. I mean, I know for sure he lost in 1.
I mean, I think it was like, Holtmann's been here since what? Was this the 4th year? So maybe like 2017.
Yeah.
So I feel like the last time they made the Elite Eight was 2013 under Thad. And I could be wrong on that. I feel like that's when it was, though. And then people were kind of, and I know he had some health issues, but people were ready for him to go because they weren't, making it deeper into the tournament anymore. He was having transfer issues too. And it's like, same thing's happening, and this guy hasn't gotten that initial success yet.
No, I mean, we're not calling for Chris Holtmann to be fired.
No, absolutely not. He's done a good job.
Very successful. I mean, I really like him. I like when I hear him talk. He seems like he understands the game of basketball very well, that he's definitely qualified to be the head basketball coach for Ohio State. It's just, it's a thing that I think discussion wise, I would like to see him now make that next step. Yeah. I mean, if he can get into the tournament, now you got to get into the second weekend.
I'm just saying, for Ohio State basketball, the expectation has to at least be, Sweet 16 within 5 years.
Yeah.
And I think that's reasonable.
And I think so. Yeah, I think Sweet 16, he probably needs to get there next year. I'm not going to say he would be on the hot seat if he didn't get there, but
I think he would be on the hot seat the following year if he doesn't get Sweet 16 next year.
He needs to start making that progress. And, I'm not saying, Ohio State, they stick with their coaches for a long time. That's pretty much been the motto throughout the programs. But eventually, I mean, when you think about the athletic department, Gene's used to winning. I mean, and you can say it's unfair to compare football to basketball. And I think Gene, in Gene's mind, he does compare them differently, but still they need to be on winning tracks and they need to start progressing. I think if Holtmann was doing Sweet 16s and Elite Eights, and there would be no discussion of this. And, I think
not at all.
I think the university would be pretty cool with that. Maybe let's get to a Final Four one of these years. And, but when you got such a model because of the football program that, it's winning, you want to win games and, you want to compete for championships. And that's how the football team is judged, is that, you got to get into the playoffs. I mean, if you don't make the playoffs, you had a bad year. I mean, you could have won every other game. And for whatever reason, there's, you lose one game and you don't make the playoffs. Yeah, that's a losing year in a lot of the mindsets of the football program. So in the basketball program, I think it is time, you need to start progressing to the next level.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I'm at with the whole thing too. I'm not calling for the guy's head. He's a good coach. I mean, I've talked about the issues I've seen from him, but I've also saw a lot of guys on Buckeye Twitter like, Chris Holtmann wasn't shooting those free throws. Chris Holtmann wasn't playing defense. Chris Holtmann wasn't taking threes. Like, you guys, like, that is such a cop out to do. I realize, there is things that fall on the players, but there's one guy that has to take the criticism that, has to answer the questions at the end of the day when it's happening year in, year out. Like, I can't help it if, the players are missing half the shots for 3 years. That sucks. But Chris Holtmann's also the one that has to explain, he has to answer for that.
Yeah. I mean, there is coaching issues with that. If your players aren't making free throws, are they shooting enough free throws in practice? Or if your players are not,
if you have a certain player that takes too many bad shots per game, are you coaching him up enough?
Are you stressing, pass the ball around and find your open shooters? Are you stressing rebounding? Are you stressing, good defensive schemes to not let some of the,
right.
So, I mean, yeah, it falls on the players. It also falls on the coach.
He has to shoulder some of the blame.
He is the leader of the team. So, I mean,
there's nothing you can do to get around that. He has to shoulder some of the blame.
Yeah. All right. So that's pretty much going to be our stretch on basketball this week.
Until next year.
I mean, we'll throw some. I'm sure we'll talk about some recruiting and different things when it happens. We'll probably maybe once we get to the Final Four in a couple of weeks, maybe we'll talk about.
See you next January, Buckeye hoops.
Quick segment about who gets to the Final Four and stuff like that. But we got all busy. Spring football is in full swing, so it's busy.
We got draft stuff, we got practice, a lot of stuff going on with spring football. Buckeyes present and past.
Yeah.
Even some Wolverines.
Yeah. So speaking of them, Nico Collins made an interesting statement this week. He said there is no gap in talent between the two teams,
or if there was, they were better.
Yeah. So I mean.
It's a stupid ass comment.
He played for Michigan. I'm not gonna what would if the roles were reversed, what would a Buckeye player say? I mean,
but a Buckeye player would be correct.
Yeah, right now they would be. But I'm just saying, if the roles were reversed, you're gonna defend your team, and
I get it.
He went to school with all these kids. I mean, I'm sure he thinks that they do have great talent. And, Nico Collins is a good receiver. Nico Collins would have had a much better career at Ohio State than he would have had in Michigan. Same, Donovan Peoples-Jones might have played for a national title or been had a shot at a national title if he was on an Ohio State team.
Man, could you imagine if we had either one of those guys in 2017?
Yeah. So, I mean, what I will say is that for the last several years under Harbaugh, Michigan's had basically the second best recruiting class in the conference. Now, when you look at, sometimes I think people get too caught up on actually where, Michigan's number 8, Ohio State's only number 4, Michigan's got a good recruiting class, and they think that those are correlating. But when you really look into it and you break down numbers and individual talent, Ohio State on points in these recruiting classes are far out ahead.
Well, the drop off from 4 to 5 in a lot of these recruiting classes is insane.
Yeah. I mean, you got to look. I mean, Ohio State has got, I think Michigan. I mean, Ohio State's got more 5-star kids on their team than all the other Big Ten schools combined. So
I think that's still factual. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it is factual too. I mean, Michigan only got one last year, maybe a second one in this upcoming, in the class that just came in. I know the running back was a 5-star. But
was he?
I think so.
The quarterback is, right.
Okay, the quarterback
McCarthy is.
So maybe in a couple services was close. He's close to a 5-star. Maybe he wasn't fully a 5-star, or maybe he was a 5-star at one point and dropped a little. But anyway, so the quarterback is a 5-star, and the running back is either a 5-star or was really close to a 5-star, and they probably have a couple of guys in there too. But I mean, again, when you break down the 4-star talent in the conference, Ohio State.
The rest of Ohio State's team is 4 stars, pretty much.
They only have a few 3 stars, and those 4 stars. I mean, a lot of them. They only give out so many certain 5 stars.
Right.
5 stars. A lot of those guys are all. I mean, almost the bulk of those guys are bordering on 5 stars.
We're talking like top 300 4-star players.
I mean, and they have been doing this class after class after class. I mean, since Urban's been there, where they're getting 10, 12 top 300 guys every recruiting class. And now it's just,
I mean, there was a time there that you're talking like 7, 8 top 100 guys a part of that class too.
But what I'm just saying, that's just a compounding effect. Every year, it's like, it's just the gap is stretching a little farther every year, and you're really starting to see it now. Where, I mean, almost every major analyst in the country, everybody wants to say people hate Ohio State, hate Ohio State. Most everybody agrees that Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State almost every year are the favorites to go into the playoffs.
Yeah,
and so, like, when you look at any of the things, like the things that come out, the preseasons, the top two, too early this, the too early that, almost everybody is saying, and you start thinking those 3 teams are almost on everybody's list. Well, those 3 teams are going to the playoffs.
I mean, there is a hierarchy there of like 5 teams that legitimately, are better, that stand out from the pack. Now, like 4 and 5, though, could they beat the 3 in front of them? Probably not. I think the 3 in front of them are on a different level than what 4 and 5 are. And I'm talking Oklahoma and Georgia. And Georgia has its deficiencies offensively that they don't match up against teams with good offenses.
Yeah. Because those 3 teams in front of them can both field much better offenses than them, and they can field comparable defenses.
If someone can figure out how to score on Georgia's defense, Georgia's toast because they can't keep up.
Yeah, and I mean Georgia. I mean the only thing Georgia needs is get rid of probably Kirby Smart and bring in somebody that knows offense and just hire a really good defensive coordinator.
Go the Saban route, and eventually Saban realizes his offenses need to be more dynamic. Get in a couple stud offensive coordinators that can kind of, get some new ideas in the room. I mean, obviously what they did last year didn't work.
Yeah. So, I mean,
the last year they were also doomed last year with a bad quarterback situation.
Now, I think Michigan's talent. So Nico Collins, where I will give him, I don't think they're comparable talent, but are they talent enough if they, we've talked about this before. Bobby Carpenter, he said this great thing last year, and I've mentioned this before on this show that, right now there is talent, there's coaching, there's development, and then there's just who wants it more, the hunger, the heart for it. And he said Ohio State's in that rivalry game, Ohio State is beating Michigan in all 4 categories. I think Michigan has enough talent that we've seen Penn State beat Ohio State. I think Michigan has enough talent that they could beat Ohio State if they had some of the tangibles. And right now they don't have any of those other tangibles.
No.
When you look at those 2, I mean, just think of just heart alone. It's always the team that wins every year that's supposed to be the one that gets the complacency. You would not think Ohio State's the team that won every year with the way you see how they play that game. And
you would just imagine an upset would have happened. And I don't see how it's even possible it could happen this year, because not only is Ohio State better, they don't overlook them. Like, they work every week for that game.
Wisconsin gave them a very competitive game 2 years ago because Ohio State was so spent on going to beat Michigan. And
they also had to beat Penn State.
True, but
before that too, that was a gauntlet at the end of that.
But that's just such there's so much focus on Michigan that one of these years Ohio State could slip up in a Big Ten title game because of that. And
sure.
I mean, it's possible, and it's because that is such an important thing to the program, and that will always be an important thing to the program. We saw during the Cooper years when it was just another game with that guy. And Ohio State fans, they don't care. They want everything else. They want the national titles. They want to go to the playoffs. But when you break down polls, I mean, they don't care if Michigan if they don't win a game in 10 years, that's the team. They want to beat Michigan. And, that's important. I love beating Michigan.
Well, I mean, the back half of the Cooper years and maybe even the first half of them, we being Ohio State, they were still the more talented team on the field, but Michigan, they either, more guys wanted it more or as many wanted it just as badly as Ohio State. And they clawed and they scratched and they won a lot of games in the trenches against Ohio State, and they ended up winning those football games.
I mean, you look at the Lloyd Carr years.
And they also had some really good receivers in there too, that we had some fall downs.
When Tressel came in and finally started, pushing Ohio State's talent advantage that was starting to get now in front of Michigan to where Michigan couldn't beat them anymore. But still, those were good games. I mean, there were games in there that we could have very easily have lost, and they won because, the Buckeyes won because, Michigan still played like, that was the most important game on their schedule. And like,
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, if to end my thought on this, if there isn't a talent gap, which Nico's suggesting, then there is a huge culture gap for how the games have played out the last couple of years.
yeah. And right now, like you said, I don't see
I
how
think there's both.
I don't see how, like, to me, Ohio State, because they didn't get to play them last year, and they're going to be so hungry. And I mean, you could say
They still have to hang 100 on them.
you can say pandemic this, pandemic that, and that's fine. But coaches are going to use what coaches can use, and I can tell you right now, Ohio State coaches are going to use that because it was Michigan who canceled that game. They're going to say Michigan was scared of you guys. Let's go out and prove that why they were scared of you guys, and let's blow them out. And there might not be a lick of truth of that up there, but I don't care. They're going to play whatever coaching advantage they can get.
I mean, they're going to try to beat the hell out of that team regardless.
All right. So, and then we wanted to talk real quick about, a lot was made this week about
40 times
Master Teague's 40 time. It's something that always gets made a lot of. It's something I kind of roll my eyes to because I've seen guys that run and they get a hard time in the NFL combines. They run like 4.6s and they're like, well, he's not that fast. I mean, like I've seen that guy
move in college. Like he knows where to be fast on a football
outrun
field.
Secondary. I mean, you see a receiver run a 4.6 and I've seen guys run past 4.3 guys because they understand the game of football.
Right.
And, they understand how routes can get out in front of people and how to beat people off of routes and stuff like that. And sometimes 40 times without pads. I mean, it's just something. Maybe if they ran it with pads, I would be like, okay, that's pretty impressive. But I mean, I've never been a big fan of some of those type of skills tests just because, I mean, it just shows that the guy is really fast. That doesn't always equate to football.
And I mean, if even without pads, if he's running legitimately anywhere from 4.35 to 4.4, though, between 220, 230 pounds, that is impressive.
Yeah. I would not want that battering ram coming at me.
But what we've always said about Master Teague, and that's who we're, specifically talking about, Chris Olave put up on Instagram their chart of who's run the fastest 40 times, I think, since Ryan Day's been there. I mean, like J.K. Dobbins was a 4.32. He's at the top of the list. Yeah. And we all remember, like, J.K. was like, yeah, he had some couple long runs, but the first thing you thought about J.K. Dobbins wasn't that he was some burner. So, I mean, I think it gets a little overstated.
It wasn't until his last year until he really turned a lot of those long runs actually into 6. I mean, there was a lot of times where
50 yards just to get tackled at the 10.
They would get him on just because they would get angles on him, and he would kind of change his routes, and like he would try to go to the sideline and been like, just keep on going, man.
Right. I know. He would change where he was going, or like he would try to go across the face of the defender. And it's like, dude, just run to the pylon.
Like if you would have just ran, I mean, they would never caught you. And
right.
It wasn't until really a senior season, until his last year or whatever, junior season, until he really started understanding
he was great. JK was great. But yeah, I mean, I just think like, and I know like Penn State, that was another one that kind of got like blown out of proportion. I think Jason Oweh ran like a 4.37 or something like that. I mean, it's just I think they make too much of it. I mean, he didn't do anything against like Thayer Mumford. I don't know if he went up against MPF or not in last year's game. I know Thayer though.
Well, if he
didn't have any stats against Thayer.
And if he did go up against MPF, he didn't get any sacks because he didn't give up any sacks neither. So
on the football field, that doesn't matter so much. I just think people get like way over the top. Like everyone's like, well, if that's what Master Teague's running now, of course he needs to be the starter. A lot more goes into that than straight line stuff. We've already talked about where we feel like Master Teague really needs to improve. And, and you've been saying it since day one. If Master Teague, if he's that fast straight line, you need to start using Master Teague then off tackle or tosses or sweeps and get him on the end of the tackle so he does have a straight line that he can run down, that he doesn't have blockers in front of him. Make people try to arm tackle him.
His biggest deficiencies are always when there's guys in front of him. He's not necessarily the best guy that weaves around traffic.
He tries to run through the wall. That's what he does.
And when you have not only your line and their line in your way, that's not always the best thing. just try to run somebody over, but if you get him on the outside where he could run somebody over, where a cornerback, you got this dude, like, I mean, Master Teague, does he even have an ounce of body fat on him?
That's a dude. He's a dude. He is a dude.
I mean, that's the man. I mean, I've seen look at his pictures. I mean, everybody was making a big comment about his how like strong he looked in the picture they released.
Push-up picture, yeah.
Like, that dude's looked like that for the last 3 years.
He looked like that as a junior in high school. Like, he's been a monster for years.
So yeah, a cornerback, a safety might be thinking twice about throwing their body in front of
right. If there's no like blocker in front of him and he can run, I mean, even a linebacker, if a linebacker can only get an arm on that guy, like, no, he's not taking him down.
That's where a 4.3 speed could kill somebody, and that size, that speed. And Ohio State has a lot of those plays in there. I mean, Zeke's ran them, JK's ran them. I mean, I've seen that play for the last how many years in a row.
We saw Derrick Henry for years at Alabama. That was very successful.
And Tennessee's adapted that play too, where they get him out in space a lot on the outside, where quick toss and just straight up the field, like
I mean, what safety or cornerback head on is going to want to tackle Master Teague running that fast right at their face?
Yeah, and I just think that's I think a lot of always been Teague's issues is that some of it are that he needs to do a little bit better on stuff, but some things you just got to call better plays for him. Yeah. Sometimes you got to think about who you're in there, and just not every play in an offense situates to everybody. So,
right. So that was my biggest takeaway. Is I know everyone like fell in love with that number. If Master Teague doesn't have the lane in front of him that he can get up to that speed, though, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah. All right, on to spring practice. So we had it was a quick video. It was like 55 seconds or whatever. Ohio State threw out on their
but they threw out a video.
They threw out on the Twitter feed.
First day of
probably on their Facebook too. It was just their first day of pads. You got to saw a lot of the drills and stuff. But I think Mayan looked pretty good.
Mayan looked like he was running through tackles. Crowley was running in and out of people, wasn't being touched.
Yeah, and you saw all the quarterbacks make a completion. They made sure that they every quarterback was in there, just
throwing to different guys that didn't make any sense.
Yeah,
I think
that was for the media's enjoyment. That Ohio State's always good at that. They always make sure they get as many people in those videos as possible, so it's still hard to kind of guess.
That or Stroud and McCord are practicing more with the ones than what Miller is. I mean, if you want to, like, if you really want to dig deep in from the 3 plays that you saw, if that's what you want to go with, maybe you could take that, because I think Jack Miller's throw was to Jaden Ballard, who we don't expect him to be a starter for Ohio State, at least next year. Of course, Chris Olave had a catch. They didn't show the quarterback that threw that ball to him. So yeah.
I think that's
a lot of intrigue. And
when they started doing a lot of that stuff was under urban psychology. So I think he liked to play around with the media too, with stuff like that. I mean, for all Jack Miller worked with the ones the whole thing, but they made sure the
one pass they showed was him to Jaden Ballard.
So you can't necessarily take any of that stuff with a grain of salt, but it's good seeing actually into spring practice. They are now officially further ahead than they were last year.
Feels good.
Yeah, so it's nice seeing this stuff. Had a couple big press conferences this week, so we'll get into those. So on the Tony Alford press conference, he talked for about 30 minutes. A lot of the same questions around, a lot on the depth. A lot of people asked him, how are you going to play 6 running backs? How do you deal with stuff like that? And he's like, I've never had to play 6 running backs ever in my career, so I don't see that changing anytime soon. I don't see the 6 guys making it on the field, even in a blowout. Normally, I mean, it's rare to get up to your 6th running back,
right?
So
that doesn't really happen, man.
But I mean, he was pretty. I always like Tony's press conferences. You can tell he's been around the game for a long time. He understands what he's talking about. He's a good running backs coach.
Well, he always has a very enjoyable press conference.
You can tell the media gets along well with him. Yeah, he gives them a lot of good stuff. He doesn't give them too much, but he also doesn't poo-poo on them either. So he was asked a lot about Teague. He never he never gave away any of his thoughts about who possibly a starter could be. It's always, it's about getting reps, this spring. That's kind of been all they've all been harking on. That's the most important thing. The one thing I did find interesting, I can't remember what reporter asked them but are they going to have to have some tough conversations at the end of spring and with some people, because 6 is a big room. And he said, right now that's not the point though. It's right now we're just practicing, but at the end of spring, people, he's like, I've always been honest with my players. I tell them where things are standing. And he's like, and you will have those conversations when we have to have those conversations. He's like, it's not right now. And he was asked about Henderson and Pryor's, their relationship, and their rivalry and all that stuff. And he was just saying how close they are with each other. They basically recruited each other, they're roommates with each other, they love each other. He was saying they basically broke into the Woody at the end of January, early February. He couldn't remember when it was, and he gets a FaceTime call at 8:00 at night, and it's one of the receivers are with him, and he didn't know which receiver because that was the one taking the video, and they're practicing blocking drills. And so he's like, I don't know how they got in there. And he's like, they should have been at home. And he's like, but they got in there. And he's like, and I'm coaching them on FaceTime. Oh, proper. So you like hearing stuff like that.
Right.
He was joking around, because Pryor made the comment that I can't wait to get hit this week. And Henderson's like, I'm not going to get hit. I was about scoring touchdowns or whatever. And he's like, well, they want to get hit. They're going to be coming there. It's coming.
Yeah.
And so that was the very good answers on those. He a couple guys tried to get the pecking order out of him, and he said right now he's not really thinking about pecking orders. It's all about everybody needs to show something to him, and then pretty much the way onto the playing field is you got to perform. And so he's like, every individual on the team needs to show me something in the room. And he's like, they know what they need to work on, what they need to get better at. He's like, and until they pretty much until they get better at that stuff, there's no further discussions. It's all practice right now. And he definitely said that Steele's not going to the linebackers.
I heard that. Couple things I took away and I thought was cool to hear, and just important moving forward was, I think he said that Marcus did admit to him that he wasn't ready for the moment in the Alabama
and
game.
That was
physically he wasn't strong enough to be there.
And that was actually during the game. It was he said Marcus came to him after a series and apologized to him and said, you've been saying I've not been ready. And you're right. And, I'm sorry. And, he's like, I didn't expect a player pretty much to come up, and he's like, why are you apologizing? And he
get out there and play.
And he's like, that's part of the honest and discussions we have. And, he's like, pretty much said, he's like, I think that opened up his eyes. So,
and I mean, we only saw Marcus for about 2.5 seconds on that spring video, but he's looking kind of jacked up.
Hey man, if he stays healthy, he had a lot of talent coming into this. So,
there's a reason they trusted him to take snaps away from Teague in that game.
So
if they didn't, Master Teague would have just played the whole game.
Yeah. If they think he's healthy enough to play, if he is healthy enough to play, and he can finally, who knows? He could end up being the starter. I know we've kind of, I kind of poo-pooed that a couple weeks ago on when we talked about the running backs. I still think Henderson is going to have a lot to say about. I just love what I see about him, but he is a freshman. There's a lot to learn. Crowley's at least been in the program. He might have not
3 years.
He might not have a lot of actual physical reps with the team, but he has a lot of mental reps with the team. He understands what they're doing. So if he's finally healthy to play, I know what he was when he came into the program. He could be the real deal. And now if that happens, that's great.
You got to remember, it wasn't like a ton of snaps or anything like that, but when Ohio State's threes were going up against the other team's threes, Marcus Crowley was averaging like 11 yards per carry. Like, he was no slouch that freshman year.
Yeah. So yeah. And sometimes players need that type of eye opener. So if he really, and now if he's seen it, who knows? If he's healthy and he's really now paying attention to all the minute details of being a running back at a major program like Ohio State. I mean, he could be the real deal. He could be the starter this year. He could take this job. I mean,
Yeah.
who knows? I mean, it's a lot of interesting, fun things that this battle is going to bring, I think.
Best thing I heard from the press conference from Alford was right at the end of it. Tim May asked him about people needing to wait their turn. He said, "Don't be patient. Show me you deserve to be on
I
the
like
field."
that too. That was a pretty good a quote that he asked them like, what do you preach them about patience? And that's pretty. He's like, I'm not a patient guy. He's like, I mean, it basically, I mean, he mentioned throughout the press conference, and Ryan Day mentioned this too, they're all friends in that room, and they all have good relationships, but so it's a fun competitiveness. It's they all work to get each other better. So there's no like threat. Like Master Teague is not looking at the new guys being like, these guys are going to steal my job from me. And I'm not, no, he's helping them. And, this is what you did wrong. And that's always been one of the most amazing things over the last several years to me, is that just how close a lot of those rooms are. And that's from Urban and Ryan Day, is that, that's the brotherhood, and it's that stuff they preach, that the team is more important than any one group, any one individual. And so
absolutely. Okay, so we're gonna transition because we had another press conference. We had Al Washington's press conference too, so we'll transition over to that. But we are going to start talking about, as we did our little series leading up to this point of who we believe the offensive depth chart is going to be as far as starters. We're going to start talking about defensive starters, as well as what we believe in spring, before spring game. So I just want a real quick conversation about silver bullets. What does silver bullets mean to you? What, like, is that, is that the linebacker core? Is that the defense as a whole stopping the run? Is that cornerbacks flying around the field stopping the run? I mean, everyone says, silver bullets are here, or they need the silver bullets back. Like, what does that mean to you? What are the silver bullets?
To me, we grew up in the 90s, when we really started watching them. A lot of those silver bullets, when I think of silver bullets, I think of just kind of a lot of those mid 90s defenses. When you think of Andy Katzenmoyer taking off that quarterback from Missouri's head, and I mean, I think this really did take off his head. I mean, knocked him out of the game. I mean, go look up Andy Katzenmoyer on YouTube for younger people that may have never have watched that. Then that was a brutal. It's different now because when you think about the silver bullets, it's, first of all, there's just, defense is not as a big as emphasis anymore in football as it once was. And it's still an important thing. The team as long as you have an offense that can score, the team with the better defense is going to still win the game.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, there's different penalties now. There's just so much that gets called differently now. So to me, silver bullets are different in just the mindset, but it is flying around. It's being in front of people. It's making the tackles. It's you get into it's not letting a running back. It's a linebacker coming up and filling that hole and crushing the running back right in the hole.
Because they've stopped the running backs for years.
I mean, all that stuff is still part of football, and that has not changed. It's not the same. I mean, defense, you don't think of brutality, and maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's not. I mean, safety is such a big deal. So, I mean, when you thought when defense was, when we were growing up, defense was, if you head-to-head hits, that was okay, because defense is about a brutality, and it's about not letting the other team. It was not part of the thing about not letting a team score was just placing fear on them, and that, this guy's a headhunter.
Yeah, right.
They're gonna hit hard. They're trying to break your bones, and so that was part of it. That was always in the offensive mindset. It's just stuff that you don't get anymore. So I think the idea of defense has changed. So the idea of silver bullets has changed. But to me, it's 4 to 6, A to B. It's just running around and making sure you're there and not giving up, not making missed tackles, picking ball. I mean, even interceptions. I mean, it's being at the right place at the right time.
Yeah. I mean, to me, like, that's why I always say, like, it was such a shame how 2019 ended with, you know, Sean getting ejected from that game, because that secondary, to me, that actually, like, that personified Silver Bullet. How much those guys, I mean, when you thought of Damon Arnett for 3 years, you know, Damon Arnett wasn't a hitter. He was a guy that you almost thought about as a liability, as a cover defender, that he was always there, but he always made too much contact. And then Damon Arnett became one of the best covered corners in America. But to go along with that, he became one of the best tackling corners with one arm in America in 2019.
Yeah.
Jeffrey Okudah was one of the best hitting tackling corners. Sean Wade was definitely the best tackling, you know, slot corner in the country. Jordan Fuller was Mr. Do Everything. So it was, yeah, that was always, that's what, to me, like, that was a shame. That's how that year ended, was because they were so good. I mean, that's, but yeah, I kind of agree with you a lot. Like, Silver Bullet, it's moving around. It's just everyone going to the ball. Hooper, who's your, when one guy, you say Silver Bullet, who do you think?
My one guy from the time I've watched.
And it's fine. You can date yourself.
From the time I watched Ohio State, so you're talking mid-90s to now. It's a tie, and they're both in the secondary. My Silver Bullets are
You're gonna steal my two.
It's Antoine Winfield's one, and then I want to say Doss, and
damn it, you took my.
But I'm also thinking Nate Sally, and because Nate Sally, I mean, he was always at the right place.
Oh no, I'm saying, like, I have two. I'm like, okay, I'll at least have one of these. Yeah, those are my two, were Winfield and Doss.
You know, but there's other guys in there too. But I would say that those, to me, that always personified. I mean, Nate Winfield is the reason why, to me, Ohio State's DBU, and it's only, I mean, they've gotten just, they've not dropped off since him. And you know, there's, with a couple exceptions, I mean, you think of Nate Clements, and Nate Clements was a great,
he had a long NFL career,
but he had a different mindset. He was more of a Deion Sanders mindset.
He wanted the interceptions,
and the majority of cornerbacks that have played for Ohio State have been, you know, that Antoine Winfield mindset.
They want the hit.
That, you know, yeah, I'll get an interception when I get an interception, but I have no problem knocking a running back out too.
Right. Or you're not catching a ball over me. Yeah. Like, you're not going to run your route.
It wasn't always necessarily, if they got an opportunity to jump a route, they were going to jump a route, but that wasn't the first thought. Right. It was that I just want to be there right when the ball gets there, because I want to hit him.
Or the quarterback's not throwing you the ball because you're not getting off the line of scrimmage.
Yeah. So, to me, that's always personified DBU at Ohio State, because more cornerbacks at Ohio State have looked like Winfield than necessarily looked like Clements. And there's nothing wrong with either mindset. And like I said, Nate Clements was a great quarterback.
If you're successful at it, you can't fault the guy.
Yeah, and his mindset was more, I'm not going to get penalties, but I'm going to get interceptions. And he was more thinking about the ball. It was about him getting there on time, was about getting to the ball, where Winfield getting on time was getting to hitting the guy.
And I think the difference might have been a couple picks in the first round. Yeah. I don't think either one. I'm pretty sure both those guys were first round draft picks.
But I mean, and to me, Mike Doss, I mean, he was just the typical team leader and just everything. I mean, and they've had so many of them, but those are just, I don't know. Those
two stood out to me too. I mean, I would say Katzenmoyer is an honorary mention.
Yeah.
All right. So getting into the Al Washington press conference. So a couple themes that came back around. I mean, one obviously would be, even though it's not a young group, it's an unproven group, that you lost 4 starters essentially from last year, of course. And then the other one would be the drama that's centered around the Tennessee job. So starting off, you know, he mentioned that the unit's looking strong, although, you know, young, unproven, but they're growing every day. Every day they're getting things more. They're working as hard as they can. They're looking like they're going to be successful. He's never had a complete turnover like this. So any stop he's had, Boston College, anywhere before that, he never had to replace all of his starters. He essentially had 4 starters last year, and he had to replace every single one of them. But he's been around this room. He's been around these guys. These are his guys. He's coached them. He thinks all of them are ready for, you know, to step up and ready to take the reins. It's just getting to that point right now. He did mention Tommy Eichenberg as someone, and I know he was asked about him, but he said Tommy's a guy that really hasn't been mentioned a whole lot. You know, Tommy was committed to Boston College. College.
Yeah.
Which he said, that's where he came from. So he knows kind of like the type of program that they are. But Tommy wasn't a blue chip guy.
And not to cut you off, Eichenberg's brother went to Notre Dame, right?
Eichenberg's brother was a lineman for Notre Dame.
And they both went to St. Ignatius, so Catholic, Northeast Ohio Catholic school. Notre Dame, Boston College,
they usually get those guys.
Those are in the top of those lists. And Boston College, being a Jesuit high school to a Jesuit university, that's a big transition. So somebody like Tommy Eichenberg going to Boston College is not a stretch. I think a lot of people roll their eyes when, why would Ohio State want somebody that was committed?
It's hard once people are in that faith-based schooling, like to begin with, they it's hard to pull them out of that.
I mean, you think about all the top talent, Ohio State's lost out of Cincinnati over the years just because
they go to Notre Dame.
Notre Dame's a big Catholic. I mean, that's the Catholic university of the country.
Right. So but he said, Tommy, although he wasn't considered a blue chip guy, he has a chip on his shoulder to prove that, he belongs in that room. And he said he's not going to call him elite yet, but that attitude will make him elite, that he's working just as hard as anyone else, as smart as anyone else. He's learning the game, learning the position. Again, he talked about, the four guys in front of them. There was such a good example that they had for these guys. These guys know how to train. These guys know how to prepare now, because of what that room lost last year.
Yeah.
They asked him, more focusing around the Tennessee aspect of the job or drama that centered around the Tennessee defensive coordinator position. So he was asked, what's special about Ohio State? He said, one, the people you work with. He has great coaches all around him. It's that he gets to do his, the job he's performing is at the highest level in the country because of the school he's at, the people he has around him, who he can learn from, just, the great coaches, Larry Johnson, Kerry Combs, guys that have been around football for so long, been coaches for so long, and they can teach him a little bit about coaching. So that was one of it. The other one was just, he's home. He's a Columbus guy. His dad was a Buckeye. He gets to be by his family. He gets to be by his in-laws. So it was really something that's special for him. Of course, he had mentioned that Tennessee moving forward is something he wants to do, but timing's important as well. You got to take the right job at the right time. Yeah. And you and I talked about this too. Tennessee, yeah, they get talent that maybe they could turn it around, but it just doesn't seem like it's something that they're able to do right now with especially the drama that, Pruitt left them and kind of the condition he left that team in. So probably a smart choice. Al Washington's only 36 also. He has plenty of time to become a defensive coordinator.
I love Al Washington, and just thinking about him there for a minute. We kind of talked about this during the season some, or right after the kind of where it was right after, on the Barnes promotion, when we knew that what's his face was leaving, the defensive coordinator last year, the other one,
Manson.
Yeah. How does so this is before Barnes got promoted and all that. And, we kind of threw out there, I wouldn't mind seeing them maybe bringing on a coach that could maybe take some of the load off of Al some. So maybe Al could start studying with Combs to, get him ready, because if somehow we could keep him, and I'm not pushing Kerry out the door. I don't know. Who knows how long Kerry wants to continue coaching for. I mean, he's got the fire of a 20-year-old. I mean,
absolutely. Yeah.
So, I mean, he might want to coach for 30 more years. I mean, and if he's successful at it, then, and, he, I think, corrects some of the mistakes, but he brought up that I think he understands where some of the mistakes were last year. So I feel, I know we'll probably talk about his press conference. He had a press conference too. We'll talk about that maybe in next week or
next week. Yeah.
But
he might have another one before then too.
Yeah. So I would really like to, I would want to do my best to try to keep Al as long as possible. I don't know how long that's going to be, because if he's got a reputation now, he's one of your best recruiters. And if he continues with that reputation, it's Ohio State. This is a launching board for a lot of coaches, because reputation sells, and somebody's going to want him. I hope we can keep him a little longer.
I'll say that Bill Davis, bringing in Taraja Mitchell, Kayvon Pope, Dallas Gant, that was a huge class. That was one of the best linebacker hauls as a total that Ohio State had in years. Now you're looking at, Hicks, McCullough, and is it Gabe Powers? The name's leaving me. So, I mean, he's going to even do better than that. I mean, the guy's a great recruiter. He seems like a great developer. His guys love him. I mean, I think I could be wrong on the one. I thought it was Taraja Mitchell. It might have been Gantha that they said, they believe he's the best in the business. So I believe so too. You're not going to be able to keep him forever. I mean, there's got to be some plan to get him as the defensive coordinator at Ohio State, because that guy, he's going to be the hottest name in football in 2 years that people are going to want him.
Yeah. Looking forward to talking about the linebackers a little bit more. We'll do linebackers next week on the next episode. So,
just two more, or actually three more. So Dallas Gant, someone tried to trick him about the depth chart, asked if Dallas Gant was healthy today, where would he be? And he said he would be in the mix. He's like, I'm not going to fall for that. I don't know about depth chart yet. They asked him, how are you assessing your next Sam linebacker? Because Barron and Pete played so differently. Yeah. And he said, really, when it comes to your linebacker room and your defense, you have to kind of structure your defense around that player's strength. You can't fit in a Sam that matches your defense. You have to match the defense to that player. Yeah. And then finally, they just asked about the two young guys that came in last year, Cody Simon, Mitchell Milton, and really, he said they're young studs. So, and I think if you see either one of those guys here, they're both obviously workout warriors, and I mean, they're huge. So I'm looking forward to those guys getting at least some special teams.
We're going to talk about Zach Harrison here in a second when we start talking about the defensive line. But with Mariotti as the strength and conditioning coach, there's a lot of workout warriors on these.
There's a lot of big dudes at Ohio State. That's for sure.
I mean, there's just how just how good they're just on the body, strength and conditioning side of it, that they look, that is just like unbelievably, like, I mean, that's when you get in those thoughts, when you just see a lot of these guys be like, I would not want to mess with that guy.
Because no.
All right, defensive line.
I think here, I mean, we can do probably a 2 deep here, but there are so many pieces at play here that we can't go too deep into anything, especially we don't know a ton yet. So
the best thing when we talk about defensive line, the best thing to talk about is Larry Johnson is still the defensive line coach. So right there, that makes you feel better about everything. He is not retired yet. Every year it gets brought up when you're thinking about retiring. So thank God we still have him. And knock on wood that we keep him for several more years, that he still wants to coach for several more years. He kind of joked when his press conference last during, I think it was during once the signing, I think the classes were signed. He talked for a little bit and somebody asked him about it, and I think he kept on saying, he's like, it gets hard. It was either last year or this year, I can't remember, but he's like, it gets harder to want to retire when every year you bring in some
right
and you want to see them through.
Yeah, well, I mean, and you get these special guys, and you do want to be the one to, kind of mold them even more so and get them ready for that next level. And of course, you don't think Larry Johnson feels good when he hears his name's attached to Nick Bosa, Joey Bosa, Chase Young. Of course he does. And before that, the studs he had at, Penn State the years before that, or those other guys like your Sam Hubbards or Tyquan Lewis's.
Yeah.
There's so much to be proud of from what he's done.
All right. So defensive ends Zach Harrison back,
Tyreek
Smith's back. Friday's back.
Javonte John Baptiste
is back.
And then you got Darian Henry Young. Is it Ty Hamilton, Davon Hamilton's younger brother? Yeah. I'm sorry, that's rude, but Jacoby McCowan, which I think he might be more in the middle. So
yeah, and then
Jaden McKenzie,
and then the Noah Potter's still there, correct?
Noah Potter's still there,
and then you get the stud from this year,
Jack Sawyer's in. He's in the house now.
I mean, and everything you're hearing about him, I mean, he could be pushing for starting time this year into the rotation. So I mean, defensive end the last how many years? I mean, you think about the Bosa brothers. Chase Young, but it's the spot. It's a spot that we need to start seeing some improvement because when you think about the last 2 seasons, so Chase Young, when he started getting quadruple teamed, it just seemed like there was a fall off. And
right, you didn't have that other guy that pressured the quarterback when that happened.
And nobody seemed like when Nick or Joey would get, you had other dudes coming at you. I mean, you had the Sam Hubbards and the Taekwon Lewises and, Chase Young, on the other side of Nick.
And Harrison had a nice season that year. I think he had like 3.5, 4 sacks.
He started off on fire, and it was like, it was building up to him. Like, my God,
you're going to have 2 of these guys.
It's going to be him and Chase Young are going to be, but he kind of dropped off a little at the end of the year. And then, last year, it's just, I don't know. Last year was a weird year. It's just hard to maybe blame anybody for last year because
it's just too many moving pieces, too much and not enough time. It was last year is an anomaly. And I mean, it's an anomaly that of course ended with a national title loss, but ended with a national title performance.
There. Yeah. But I'm defensive end has always been kind of, just the when you think about the defensive ends over the last several years, and I mean, it's just Ohio State. Now that's becoming an Ohio State thing, and defensive end you almost.
Right.
Yeah. And I think these guys, I think Zach Harrison's I think, Ryan Day, I mean, he specifically mentioned him that it seems like it's clicking for him.
Well, I mean, from what we saw last year, though, coming back, is Tyreek Smith your best defensive end right now?
I would say so. He's probably my top guy. He did a little bit more at the end of the year.
Zach has every gift known to man. And Ryan Day said, with workouts, training, and all that other stuff, it's all starting to really click with him.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and then you think about, Friday didn't play a lot last year.
Friday was hurt for most of the year.
And then, I mean, he's kind of that guy in the mix where he makes a rushman package work because you can put him in the middle
right
on passing down. So,
but we've seen him do fine against tackles as well.
Yeah. So I think, if you're going to say, the anomaly of last year, I didn't feel our defensive line was what our defensive line normally is. I think our defensive line will be back to full practices. They're going to get all the workouts that they need. Larry Johnson's still your coach. So I think the defense ends, those packages are going to be just flying like crazy this year. Defensive tackles, I think, are interesting.
Yeah. I think defensive tackle, I mean, I know a lot of people want like a guy that really takes up space, being that one technique. I mean, Tommy had such a great year. Yeah. It's a shame to lose the guy, but I think he's going to do wonderful things at Pro Day. And Tommy Togiai is going to train himself into the first round. Something inside of me just really believes that. People say, he grading out a low second, third round. You don't see defensive tackles like that all the time. Like Tommy Togiai, I believe he's going to get himself into end of the first round, I think, but he'll be a first round pick.
Togiai is just one of those guys that, to me, when you start getting into the later, when you get past, the Trevor Lawrences, the Justin Fields, the guys that everybody's expecting to be at the top, it's so hard to start judging players at that point. That's why I've always said the guys like Mel Kiper, Todd McShay, they were end all be all, as they knew this for sure. They would be working for these NFL teams. Right. I've seen the Steelers. I've seen the Ravens. I've seen any one of these teams could come up and take a
Tommy Togiai. If he goes to the AFC North, he better be in brown and orange. Yeah. That's all I have to say, because I will be horrified that man's going to be in the same division as the team that I love.
Yeah. So, but I could see the Patriots. There's all kinds of teams that, I mean, I know the Patriots are looking at other things,
they got too much to figure out offensively.
But in a typical year, that would be a New England Patriot pick, a Tommy Togiai at the end of the first round. So yeah, I kind of agree with you. I think he'll be somewhere in that late first round to mid second round range.
I mean, hell, that looks real good in Kansas City. The Chiefs, that would look real good on their defensive line.
So yeah, I think that I agree with you with that. Of course, the other defensive tackle,
Haskell Gary.
He's back. So, I mean,
he was so dominant last year too. That was really such a shocker because he hadn't made that step yet. And of course he had the offseason issue where he got shot in the face. Like not even not even being over dramatic on that one. He was literally shot in the face and he became a stud, was of course snubbed as I think was he honorable mention or third team all Big Ten,
which was a joke. I mean,
I think he ended up being the second team or third team All-American. Like it was so it's such bull crap that what he ended up with the all Big Ten.
But I don't know if you can name two better defensive tackles in the Big Ten last year than the two we had. I mean,
I don't know,
Haskell and Tommy.
Right. I don't know if you could name a better two for any team. I mean, you might say there was a better defensive tackle out there than either one of them, but as a tandem, I don't think you could say that there was a team that had two better defensive tackles starting for them.
Yeah, and I mean, you definitely could tell, you missed Tommy in that final game.
Absolutely. Well, and you had it's just like Tommy's out, Tyreek Smith's out. I think there was a couple injuries that were still like Tyler Friday wasn't 100% healthy. Like he had came back. I mean, Enoch Vamahi, a guard who was getting up to size to being guard for the last 2 years, was put in as a defensive tackle the day of a national or the week of a national title game. So, I mean, obviously situations were not ideal.
So who are the next? So, Haskell's obviously, he's your three.
He's your three.
Who's your backups there and who's now taking the ones?
Well, okay. Actually, Haskell, I might not say he's the three. So I think you got to go with talent here. I don't think you can go size. I think you got to go your two best defensive tackles. Teron Vincent and Haskell Garrett, I think, are the two best players you have that line up a defensive tackle. I think Haskell can hold his own as a one. Or Vincent. I mean, they both took reps at it. So I think you probably those two. But I mean, Jaron Cage, Antoine Jackson. I know they got a couple stud freshmen in there looking really good. So
some big, they've gotten some big praise.
I mean, what do you think? Do you think Vincent, or do you think you go with one of the bigger bodies as a natural one technique?
I'd like to see it between, I'd like to see a mixture, maybe depending on who they're playing. In early downs, maybe somebody like a Jaron Cage, see if he can get up there, that he can be a first and second down type defensive tackle. I'm interested in this the kid out of Streetsboro, Hill. It was Hill, right?
Hall. Mike Hall.
Some of the stuff that they're saying about him,
the kid from, and his name's going to escape me, from Virginia. Is it Tyleik Williams?
Yeah,
he's 330 and he runs his first steps like BB Landers.
Yeah. Now that could be a big deal if he's ready physically to play.
And that's so hard though to ask him to be a nose tackle coming in.
Yeah. I like what you're saying between Haskell and Teron. I'd like to see Jaron Cage up there. Some of these other guys, like I said, Tyler Friday and Rushman packages. You throw a Friday with maybe Zach Harrison, Tyreek Smith, and Baptiste. But
the thing with Vincent or Garrett is one of those guys could be fast enough that they can stay in.
So,
because we saw that with Draymond, even though Draymond naturally was probably a defensive end, but they moved him down to tackle.
The thing I'm going to keep harping back to, there's just a lot of talent there. You got the right coach coaching them, and so I think they'll be fine. There's a lot of question marks. I'm not going to say that there isn't question marks. There's, for as much talent as they got coming back, it seems like they have more question marks than you think they should, but they're kind of good question marks. I don't think there's anything bad, like, we're going to really, how are we going to replace? I think there's guys that could replace Tommy Togiai. Are they going to be Tommy? No, but are they going to be good enough that you could go, win Big Ten championships and national championships with them? Yeah, there's enough talent there to do that.
Isn't that just kind of like, I don't want to say a shame, because everything worked out fine. And even though we didn't win a national title within the years, but Tommy Toga and Teron Vincent in one class, like that was supposed to be the answer defensive tackle, that we were going to win a national title with those two playing. And I don't even know how many times they ever even got to line up next to each other on the field.
Well, then that's kind of like when
that's football.
That's football, and it is football. When you think about all this stuff is done with all these classes. When you think about, you bring in two stud tackles and the offensive tackles in the same. Oh my God, they're going to be anchoring this line for years to come, and that doesn't honestly go. It doesn't always happen that way, and I remember when Demetrius Knox, Jamarco Jones, and there was another big guy on that line that they were all recruited at the same class, weren't they? I think so. It was somebody was with Jamarco. I thought it was Demetrius.
Was that Isaiah Prince's year?
Maybe. But those guys were all. I mean, didn't happen. Jamarco was pretty much.
He played 1 year and he went off to the NFL.
And Demetrius took a long time to get to the field, and then when he got to the field, he was like, man, he just seemed like when he played the end of that one season, it's like, man, Demetrius. I mean, what was he doing in practice? Because it looked like he could have been playing for the last 2 years.
But then he gets hurt, and it's like, what was Wyatt Davis doing in practice? Because he's better than this guy.
Yeah. So it's weird with stuff like that. So yeah, that stuff is weird. It happens, and that is football.
Yeah, I just okay. So I mean, I think we got a good feel of positions. I mean, there's just too many young guys to really go, person
there's just so
by
many.
person.
They have so many defensive linemen that,
and they're also, I mean, they're all good. Like some of them came in highly rated. Some of them were 3-star projects that we've heard good things about.
It's the good rotational issues, and that's the one thing I really would like to see them get back to. It's kind of I want them, last year was such a difficult year that, get back into the 8-10 man rotation that it don't matter who's in there.
Right.
These guys, you're going to have Jack Sawyer and Haskell Garrett at times be on the same line because, you're just rotating guys and, throw bodies at those offensive lines.
And I'm sorry if I already said this. I was thinking it. I don't know if I said it, but you had mentioned like you got a lot of question marks because of pieces you've lost or pieces that didn't really get to develop from last year. The thing, like, it seems like with all the question marks you have, you also have question marks of like really good, unproven young talent that's come in as well.
Exactly.
Okay, so give me a 2 deep. You can start off however you want. If you want to do the 2 like defensive ends, defensive tackles, give me a 2 deep though, assuming that game 1, snap 1, we have 4 down linemen.
All right, so I'm going to say on your ends are Tyreek and Zach. In the middle is Haskell, and I'm going to say I'm going to go with Jaron Cage. And then Vincent and be behind him. I'm going to go with one of the. That one's so hard. I'll throw something crazy out there. I'm going to say Hall out of Streets Pro. He'll be in the 2 deep. I like him. I like what he's hearing. I mean, from him, a lot of people like what they're seeing. I think he'll be there. And then Friday and Baptiste is your outside guys. Jack Sawyer will be pushing though, and pushing hard.
So he'll be Chase Young from 17.
Yeah.
Okay. Give me a Rushman line.
The Rushman line will be, I think, will be Smith and Harrison on the ends with Haskell and Friday in the middle, or it'd be all defense of ends with Harrison, Baptiste on one of the ends, and Harrison and Friday in the middle.
Okay. So I think Tyreek Smith and Zach Harrison are your 2 starting defensive ends. I'll give Tyler Friday and Jack Sawyer the backup nod. I think Sawyer is going to just prove he's better than Javonte John Baptiste. It'll be close though, and it could go either way. Defensive tackles, I still want to say Haskell Gary, Teron Vincent in one combination or the other. I'm not going to commit to a 1 or a 3 yet who's where, but backing them up, I like Cage and let's say Mike Hall. I think it's Mike Hall. I don't know. Maybe it is Hill. I think it's Hall though.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that one from you. I too am impressed. I've seen some of his workout videos he's been putting out there too.
Yeah.
Kid looks good. Only hear good things about him.
It seems like they're very high on him. And he was one of those that he was very close to getting to, he was in that high 4-star range.
He moved up a ton his senior year.
So I think he's going to be a force to reckon with for the next 3 to 4 years.
I agree. So, I mean, I feel good about defensive line conversation. Larry Johnson's coaching them. I know we probably went more in depth with players with the other positions, but there's so many of them, and there's just so many that are returning.
If we were, I mean, you'd be just to think about this true breakdown. I mean, because the defense, they've recruited so many players over the last 3-4 years that it's just there's just so many guys there, and
some people have moved. Like Carmonte Hamilton went from tight end to defensive end, so there's a lot of people to talk about there.
Big room. They got a lot of players,
and I think once we watch the spring game, we'll have kind of a better feel for it, and we can revisit at that time.
Yeah. All right, so we wanted to throw out was one last thing, just Northeast Ohio.
We gotta talk about a Northeast Ohio boy, Stipe Miocic. I'm sure everyone knows he's fighting Francis Ngannou or for the second time tonight. Should be a good match. Stipe is the greatest heavyweight in UFC history. I will die on that hill. I've seen many of his fights. So firstly, I just wanted to ask, because they've fought before and Francis, he wore himself out. He got too tired and Stipe pretty much just laid on him the entire fight. So do you think Stipe is going to win this fight?
I do. Now rematches are always weird to me because it always just seems like, and I could be wrong, it's just my mental perception of watching UFC, and there's just something that we've recently, actually Stipe is kind of what got us into watching UFC a little bit more. We grew up in a boxing household.
I still love boxing.
We grew up our uncle and our dad and they were all big boxing fans growing up, so we were big boxing fans growing up.
Too many screwy scorecards in boxing.
Yeah. But I guess my perception is it always seems like the guy that lost the first fight wins in the rematch. But I think Stipe will win because I'm Team Stipe, and I think he will be a little bit more prepared for Ngannou's just his furiousness. He did tire himself out in that last fight. I think Stipe will be ready for that, but Ngannou will probably hope
he throws him. Sorry, I almost said the big one there. He throws a hard punch, man.
Yeah. So it'll be an interesting fight. Definitely think Stipe will win, though. I'm looking forward to it. I'm definitely still in that casual fan range of UFC. I don't watch every pay-per-view. I have friends that do. I like it. I really do like it. I think it's
scorecards or stoppage.
Stoppage. I'll say the fourth.
Okay. I like that. Yeah, I'll go 5th round knockout. I don't think it's going to the cards, but I think Francis he'll tire, his hands will go down just like Cormier's did, and Stipe will get him on the chin. And he'll go down, and then Stipe will just, mount and punch him, and they'll
he's got great he's just got great endurance and his conditioning, because that's the last several fights I've watched of him. He gets really into he really fills people out early in the fights, kind of lets them do their thing and stuff like that. But when they start really tiring down, he really starts laying it on you in the fourth, it seems like in that 4th, 5th round, and catches people on that cage.
And he's a skilled boxer and he is a skilled wrestler. I mean, of course, like he's not high level Daniel Cormier like wrestling, but no one in UFC, they're mostly not. So he can definitely handle himself with anybody. He has the conditioning. So yeah, I'll say it gets into the 5th round, but I think he'll stop him. With that being all said, then is this Stipe's last fight? Because he's talked about retiring for some time now.
Yeah.
If he wins, does he want John Jones?
I mean, I know what UFC fans will want. I mean, I don't know if he will say it tonight one way or another. I think that they will probably maybe try to get him one more fight. I mean, him and Jones would be a very interesting fight. And then
it can't be anyone else, right? Like it has to be John Jones.
It would have to be that, I would think. But I'm going to say no. They will get one big more fight.
They'll get John. If he wins, it'll be John Jones, Stipe.
Yeah.
Okay. I like it. So,
and if he loses, then I think I think they will have a third fight between these two.
Do you think Ngannou and Ngannou, I can't say his name. Do you think he would fight? Do you think he'll fight Jones in between, or do you think immediately it would go to fight 3 between these two?
I want to say immediately they'll probably try to get a third fight. But I don't know. I mean, he could fight somebody in the middle. I guess that's kind of up to how UFC wants to do it and stuff. Do they want to try to set up a Stipe Jones fight? So, get Stipe one more shot to get the title back before that happens. But they could also set Stipe Jones up the other way. Maybe Jones and have Jones and Ngannou fight, and then
Ngannou. I can't. I'll practice this name next time.
I might be saying it wrong.
I know these names. No, I don't think you are. I know the names, but I don't say them right when we're on here. So,
but I'm gonna go with Stipe in the 4th.
Okay.
All right, so we'll get on out of there with that today. So it was, looking forward to keep the spring practice going.
Linebackers next week.
We'll do linebackers next week. A lot to break down. Obviously with those guys that are new starters that have been in the program.
Is that the most interesting group out of? I mean, because you got nobody coming back.
It is interesting to me just because I know a lot about all those guys.
It's pure speculation.
They have not played, so
it's like completely speculative. So it'll be an interesting conversation next week.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming out today to the Buckeye Bar. I'm John.
And I'm Mike.
OH.
IO.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's Buckeye Bar Guys on Buckeye Bar Talk. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Hit that all notifications bell so you see when new content is added. And please remember to like and share so we can grow our audience. Don't be afraid to comment. We want to know what you're thinking, and we want to know what content to add for you guys. OH.
IO.